Hello, everybody out there in TV land. My friend Brian May is here.
Hey, everybody, we are here.
I don't know if it's TV land, it's YouTube land. It's kind of the same thing, I guess. I don't
I,
know.
I don't think I think there's probably a lot of people who don't really understand what TV land is anymore, right?
Yeah, yeah, crazy. Um, so Brian, we missed last week because of Easter. Hope everybody had a good Easter and went to your churches and gave money. Just kidding. I don't want to be facetious. No, I took the day and we kind of had some family time here. I moved, so I've been talking about that for a while. But we moved and we are now in our home. I'm in the studio, my new studio here, and just doing moving stuff, painting and getting the place all duded up for our lives. But yeah, so it's been good. Had a good relaxing weekend.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We did the same. We just kind of hung out and took it easy. The weather here was really bad on Easter, so it
was it?
wasn't the greatest day. So, but
I
hey,
got you. Well, lots been happening this week. It's funny because I was up until yesterday, I didn't know what we were going to talk about. And then this week, and then all of a sudden, yeah, the phone starts buzzing. So we got two incidents that we want to kind of talk about. First one, the Christian Life High School where I worked as a youth pastor. I was the special life director there from 89 to 94, and we've talked about it before. We talked about, Jeannie was the superintendent, Jeannie Mayo, and there was some alleged cover up there with leaders and staff members that were um, inappropriate with teenagers, and they just got basically they never turned it into the authorities. They just sort of handled it on their own. I can't get too detailed about it because there's some people that have asked to remain anonymous, but unless there's a lawsuit, and then they're willing to come out um, and do some things. But basically, I know of at least three situations up there that were bad. But anyways, it came out this week that a teacher was fired, fired, and it was in the news. Actually, it was in the Rockford News. Two news agencies covered it, um, and there may be more. I haven't really looked into it, but the initial couple of them, reported that this teacher was fired because of an inappropriate relationship with a female student. He was a male, and he was 25, and she was, I think when it started, she was 15 or 16 because it's been going on
yeah,
for a couple of years, allegedly. So I have an inside scoop there, somebody that knows the situation pretty well, and they're kind of keeping me up on some of the details. But bottom line is that they allegedly the school knew about it even a year ago, year and a half ago. This is what some people are talking about. I don't have any proof on this, but um, I do trust these people that are talking to me, and they're saying no doubt that the school knew about it, and try to handle it within, by telling the guy to lay off and that kind of stuff. But it kept going. Finally, it blew up in everybody's face, and it's pretty obvious that they're having a relationship. And so, um, so yeah, they were forced to fire him. So, and I think they were forced to fire him. So they really had no choice. And then it came out in the news, and so it's the same old thing. It's that they have a history in that organization at Christian Life High School of covering up sexual predatory behavior. I mean, I when I was there, I saw it, and then I don't know what's happened in between the time I left and um, and now. Although I do know Eileen came on and talked about some situations that happened even after when I did leave. So in the '90s, when she was there was some inappropriate things that had gone on, and they tried to cover it up, in house and not handle it, through the law. And so here we are again, Brian. Here we are again.
yeah. Same old story, same old song and dance, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it is. I think what I would like to do. I sent you a text, and I surprised myself um, with myself. Uh, with my reaction to this. So, Mike and I were talking about this via text last week before we learned about this second thing, and we were talking about the people, the common parties that were involved, both here in Bellevue and in Rockford and on into Atlanta and other places. And I said this is their legacy: systems where children are abused and adults covered up for the sake of the brand, for the sake of their reputation. We see this over and over and over again. And, it's funny, Mike, you and I have talked about trying to talk about some different things on this podcast, but these people just won't give us the opportunity to do that, will they?
No, for real. Sometimes it sounds like we're beating a dead horse, but the horse keeps coming back. Like
Yeah.
somebody's giving them mouth to mouth. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
Well,
know,
I
it's
heard cats have 9 lives. How many lives do these horses have? I mean, this thing will not stop, right?
it's just sad. And I really want to reach out to this family and say to them, don't handle this bad. Like don't let the church talk you into handling it, spiritually, because they're going to have their spin on it. They're going to try to get them to, not sue the school or whatever. And I'm not saying they should sue the school. I'm just saying they're going to cover their bases and do whatever they need to do. But I personally think if there was something, if the school knew about it and they didn't take action, because this teacher is some hotshot teacher who is very well educated, and I don't know what he teaches, but he's, and he might be a family member of somebody high up. I don't know. Who knows why they're protecting him, but they
Right.
protected him, and it looks like. And
Yeah.
so, um, no, I mean they need to do a thorough investigation and find
Right.
out why they didn't take action 2 years ago, because this girl probably now is in love with this guy, and he's groomed her to believe that he loves her too. And she's young, and probably believes him. But just like Jen Christensen came on here and talked about how that happened to her with Doug, that
Right.
she believed him. She believed that he really loved her, and he stayed married to his wife, and was just having sex with her on the side. And it was just and I don't know if there was physical relationship with this guy or not. My guess would be yes, but that hasn't come out yet. But whatever. But the bottom line is that she believed that he's in love with her, and she's gonna find out that she was groomed, and you need to get her some help now. She needs to
Right.
go to counseling now.
Right.
And yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's that, I mean, this is going way back, right, to when we had Dina on the podcast, Dr. Dina, and all of these kinds of things. Is that as these incidents come to light, there's this massive manipulative force within these institutions that call themselves the church. And depending upon how you define church, you can define whether or not they're really that or not. But there's this massive mechanism in some of these institutions um, that will go to no end to preserve themselves, right down to the fact that they will draw the God card and say, "Hey, you know what? If we're not here, if we're not present in this city, or if we're not doing this work that we say that we're doing in this city, then people are going to suffer." And the irony of that, Mike, is the fact that they're there doing the work that they're doing in that city is causing people like this young girl and her family to suffer. They may be, I mean, maybe feeding the homeless and clothing people who need it and all of that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, these systems, these institutions that are built on what I will say is very shaky ground, are inevitably going to cause suffering to innocent people. And that's not going to change until people stand up, number one, and hold them accountable. Um, and part of holding them accountable is telling the truth, saying it out loud. And I just want to echo your comments. I sure hope this girl and her family are able to get into a situation, unlike our friend, immediately, and begin to deal with the trauma um, that goes with any sort of grooming, any sort of abuse, any sort of manipulation like this, so that she's not in her 30s or 40s or 50s before she begins to deal with it.
That's all I could think of,
She
Brian.
deals with
That's
it
all
now.
I could think of
Yeah,
was fast forward this thing 10 years from now. If
yeah,
they don't handle this right, they're
right,
gonna really mess this girl up. I mean, we know Jen's doing great now. She's pulled
yeah,
herself out and she's doing great. But there was some years of bad road there that could have been avoided if the people in her life handled it better. And even her, the people in her family have said the same thing. We could have handled this better. And to their defense, they just handled it the way the church told them to,
right,
and they believed them. And
right,
and that was a bunch of crap. I mean, it was
right,
just covering the brand. It was covering their own asses instead of really helping this girl. Well, let's not let anybody know about it. We'll brush it under the rug. We'll take care of it. You never did take care of it. You never handled it right. You didn't
right,
handle her. You didn't get her counseling. You didn't walk her through what actually happened to her. And so I hope for this girl's sake that they handle it right and they do it right by her, you know. And let's be clear, these things are going to happen, right? I mean, in every organization, these things can happen. It's the way you handle it. If there was a cover up at all, if they knew about it a year ago and they just ignored it or tried to, placate it and handle it with, by not blowing it up, then they've got blood on their hands. I mean, they've got some culpability here, and that's what I'm talking about. It's not that, yeah, I told we've talked about this before, but my church, or the church I was going to, they had a situation where they had a sexual abuse situation, but as soon as they found out about it, they called the police. They went right to the authorities, and they knew the media was going to cover it, but they didn't care because that's the right thing to do. And now it's not even an issue. It's blown over. It's not. Everybody's getting the help they need, and everybody's in good shape. But this cover up stuff, this whole idea, I don't understand, Brian, the arrogance in these people like the Jeremy DeWerts and the Jeannie Mayos and these people, the arrogance that they have to think that they know better than these families and they know better than the police in their town. Like
yeah,
these things are set up on purpose to help people that have been victims of these things. And they just circumvent the whole thing by their spirituality. It just makes me sick to my stomach.
right, right. And it's bad enough when it happens in an institution that does not claim to live to a higher standard.
Right.
And you know, in all of the Christian organizations you and I have been a part of, Mike, they all claim to live to a higher standard. And I'm hearing in my head, some Bible verses, where Jesus is talking about, don't let anybody harm the least of these. Um, those kinds of things. I mean, that's an ideal. That's a standard. If you're going to call yourself a Christian, and if you're going to say that you're trying to live by the ethic and ethos of Jesus, then you are someone who advocates and protects and does everything they possibly can to make sure that people are safe, that they're not used, that they're not abused. I mean, that's where
Yeah.
to coin, some blonde lady we both used to work for, that's where the rubber hits the road, Mike. It
Yeah.
isn't in the words that you say. It isn't in, the
Yeah.
platitudes you utter from a platform. It's the way you behave. It's the way you treat people.
Right.
It's how your institution functions. It's what its policies are for. I mean, Mike, you and I both know that way back in the early '90s when this first started with Jen, that there was a
It started in the 80s.
'80s, yeah. I mean, but there was a massive effort to if you put the best spin on it would be to keep this undercover so that it could be managed without getting in the public eye. And you and I both pretty much have alleged that, and I think this is pretty true, that that the motive behind that was not for the best of the individual or the family. It was for the best of the institution.
Right. 100%.
You know?
100%. And they did it over and over and over again,
Right.
haven't learned a lesson,
Right.
and it's just awful. It's just
Right.
awful. Well,
Right.
then, do you want to unpack the second thing here that we learned this week?
Yeah. So, Mike sent me an article yesterday that there is a church in Atlanta, strangely enough, called the Atlanta Dream Center. Now, this is an Assemblies of God church, and they ran a variety of ministries. One of which was a anti-human trafficking ministry, trying to rescue people out of trafficking. Ironically enough, as you hear this story, one of them was I think it's the Atlanta School of Ministry, which is not to be conflated with what Jeannie was running at one time and got shut down. Um, but this ministry was being run by the son of the pastor of the church, who, strangely enough, in 2021 had lost his ministry credentials for some reason, not really apparent. And fast forward to just recently, a young woman who was part of that ministry has filed a suit in federal district court, alleging human trafficking and sexual abuse within that ministry. Now, the human trafficking, and let me just say right here, we are just starting to dig into this. There's an 85-page court filing, and I'm about maybe 25% of the way through it, and I'm already on fire. I'm really angry about this. But essentially, if you're out there and listening to anything about the Masters Commission, it's just a rebranded Masters Commission kind of program where they were taking advantage of these kids to, at the end of the day, generate revenue. We'll talk more about what the whole thing was, but she is suing under a federal statute seeking damages for essentially being abused. What they call it? They called it labor trafficking, is what they called it in the suit. But she was also fondled and alleges that this gentleman that was running the program, this pastor's son, had sexually abused her. And so we are, number one, we're digesting this right now, but we're also um, kind of following this to see how this breaks. But as Mike and I have talked, this whole situation, this is nothing new under the sun, right, Mike?
No, no, no. I mean, and I immediately the I sent it to a lot of people, but I sent the article to my son and my daughter, both of them, which did master's commission. And just to be clear, I ran two master's commissions, but they they the way they basically the way they were raising money is they got into a contract with a company that basically helps them raise money. Now, I've heard that this company, I'm not sure about this, but I've heard that this company was formed by former master's commission students that are now entrepreneurs, and it's a for-profit business, I believe. And what they do is they solicit these big events like Super Bowls and Daytona 500s and the Ryder Cup and College World Series and places like that. And they offer free labor, or not free labor, they offer labor for a donation. And I don't know if it's a set amount. I'm not sure about that. But these events work, make out real well, because instead of having to pay workers $20 an hour to run their hot dog stand, or to serve the my daughter actually served in some of the luxury booths at the College World Series, and instead of having to pay these people to do it, they would just get these people to do it for free. So my daughter was told that, and my son were told that this money that we're raising for doing these things, and they did several of them. It wasn't just one event. I think my son said he did like somewhere around 10 events in Las Vegas and Chicago. They would fly them in there to go do work these things, and they would sleep on the floor in hotel rooms and get up. They work ungodly hours, like 12 hours a day, and running these events constantly on their feet and doing different things. And my daughter said that she was told she was gonna get her tuition paid this way, and they never applied it. They never applied any of the money that she raised, or if they did, it was very minimal. She got into a situation where one of the guys that she worked with is who I actually know from a different master's commission, And I know him personally just from business stuff. And he didn't know any better, but he told my daughter how much that booth had raised. It was somewhere around $1,800 that Riley had raised through tips because they were working a luxury booth with a bunch of, rich guys watching the World Series. And, throughout the weekend, they tipped these servers and they made $1,800. Riley didn't see a dime of it. And I actually confronted the director and said, why? And he said, well, we have to be fair about it and be equitable and whatever. But then nobody saw it. I mean, no, and that was the thing. There's no accountability
Yeah.
on where that money went. Now they could have done good things with it, but nobody knew. And they did lie. They lied to my son and daughter, and both organizations. My son went to the one up in Minnesota in Cold Spring. None of that money, and they were bugging him about paying tuition. Like he needed to, I think he owed $1,000 on his tuition. They were bugging him for a while about it, and he had worked all this free labor for them. And so it's it's we're, like you said, we're just unpacking this now, but I have a personal experience with it.
Right.
And I mean,
Right.
I could go on because there's more.
Right. I mean, and we'll talk about because it's really laid out in detail in the filing in federal district court. We'll talk a little bit about what the scam is in weeks ahead, and it is a scam in my opinion. But I think it's interesting, Mike, that you and I both you have much more experience with this than I have. But I remember when I can remember talking to you when you were running Master's Commission in Bellevue. One of the things that you were doing with kids was, or students, they're young adults, was taking them out. You were kind of doing what you're doing now. You're taking them into schools and giving them opportunity to get into situations where they could actually help other young people, which I don't know, that kind of sounds like ministry to me, right? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, I was really frustrated with the fact that they kept wanting us to like move chairs, and the church was little. I used to fight in staff meeting for not letting Masters Commission just be slaves of the church. We marketed to them that we were going to teach them ministry. And so, for the most part, that's what we were doing with youth ministry. We tried to get them, you know, running small groups and actually ministering to teenagers in the town of Bellevue, but also this school assembly program. And we did charge the schools for money. I mean, for doing the program, but all of that money went back into the program. It didn't go to anybody's salary. It didn't go to my salary. Certainly, it went. It if it we might have paid an intern. I think we did pay one intern like $5,000 a year. And it might have come out of that. I don't remember how all that worked, but we were trying really hard to walk in integrity and not use those kids as slaves. But I mean, I was fighting the church staff all the time. What I remember, one of the pastors wanted them to walk the streets of Bellevue and hand out this ridiculous CD that of supposedly some drillers in China were drilling a hole and they heard people screaming in hell, and which is preposterous, which is ridiculous anyways. Like let's just put that aside for a minute. Like like even if it was a legit tape, walking around and handing it out to everybody in Bellevue was just the most ridiculous thing I've ever. So I fought with the pastor. I was like, no, they're not doing that. I'm not going to have them go door to door. And then I went to Gary. I went to Pastor Gary, and I was like, are you serious about this? I mean, they first of all they spent $10,000 buying these stupid bullshit tapes that was just awful.
Somebody
And
laughed on the way to the bank.
yeah, oh yeah, here's a tape at church. I mean, oh my gosh. So, anyways, that's this whole side thing. But no, we were always trying to give these kids legitimate ministry, you know, experiences because that's what they were paying for. You
Yeah.
know, my daughter told me a thing. I probably shouldn't say this because I'm probably getting in trouble with her, but they had a student after I left. Corey Delmo was running the program, and I think even Corey was always over it. But then there was a guy named Ryan Tregeser that was running it, and they had a student that passed away,
Right.
and everybody was devastated. You were there. You knew that girl, and
Yeah.
um,
And
and
in
they
fact,
made the
it
Masters
was
Commission
right.
students. What's that?
I was going to say it happened. My wife had just gone to a missions trip in Haiti with a group of master's commission students, including this young woman, who just right after that was in a tragic accident and passed away.
Just today, my daughter told me that they had, they lost a student. I mean, they all loved this girl. And they made those kids work the funeral. They had to actually set up the chairs and break down the chairs and send out all the invitations and do all the legwork, behind the scenes work for this funeral, like they were just doing it for somebody in the church. That was one of their staff members. I mean, that was one of their teammates. And
Right.
and they just, my daughter goes, Dad, I just wanted to be waited on. I just wanted them to love us,
Yeah.
for because we were all hurting so bad. She goes, I couldn't believe that they were having us do that. But that was their mindset, Brian. That's what this girl is, this lawsuit is basically saying is, we were just commodities. We were just, warm bodies to be used to get money, to, to be basically, to be slaved out, to these companies. And who knows what happened to that money? Who knows what they did with it? And Jeannie Mayer herself, I mean, she's a millionaire. I mean, she's legitimately a millionaire. She has over $5 million in the bank. How did she get that money? Well, she has cadre, and cadre is, she can't run it the way she used to run it, because how she used to run it, those kids that worked her master's commission were slaves to those people that came in and they paid Jeannie Mayo money to teach them. These kids were forced to sleep in other places so she could house these kids. I mean, they didn't eat half the time. I mean, the stories they tell about what they had to do to these cadres. Like, if Jeannie Mayo had to pay for that service that those kids provided in order to get the money from these people from churches around the country, sending their youth pastors there to be trained, um, she would never be able, they would never break even. I mean, she relied solely on the slave labor she was getting from these master students. That's how she got rich. It's
Yeah.
it's it's ugly.
Yeah.
These people are just disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll break this whole thing down in Atlanta a little bit more, but it's interesting that you use that word because essentially it's indentured servitude, right? It's like in back in the day that, like, if people wanted to come to America, they would pay a price to come here, but then they would have to work it off. And many people would get into a situation where the person who paid the price, they'd say, well, no, you just got a little bit more. You just owe a little bit more. You just owe a little bit more. And
Yeah.
that's part of the story that's outlined in this court filing. And that's part of what, you and I have experienced. It's interesting because, as I mentioned, I mean, we saw master's students go on missions trips and raise money to go on missions trips. But eventually, in our last few years at the church, it seemed like the only place they went, it was run by this guy who liked to go to different places and, I don't know, enjoy the locations, it seemed. But it seemed like all they did was go out on these fundraising kinds of things. They would go here and they would work this event, and they would go there and they would work that event. They may have gone on a missions trip or two, I don't know, but it seemed like the whole that had it had an inordinate focus on fundraising. And as we unpack this thing in Atlanta, I don't have any specific knowledge that um, you know how much was going to forgive the tuition of these students in the program, but so I don't want to make any assumptions there or assertions
Well,
there.
I think that was up to every individual master's commission, right? It's like, if on the front end of it, this company was just doing, they were just, I personally, I don't know much about it. I know they're being sued too, but my personal feeling is that, if it's what the individual master's commission director did with the money. If he was saying to his students, hey, you have an opportunity to work off a debt, do you want to do it? And my daughter was like, yeah, I want to do it because I want to work off my debt. And then when she went, they pulled, it was basically bait and switch. That's my problem. My problem isn't the even the whole idea of doing that. If somebody's if that's an opportunity for somebody to pay down a debt and they want to do it, and they're not voluntold to do it, but they're asked to do it, and they can say no. That's the other thing. Could they say no? Probably not. And so they were kind of forced to do it. So that's a problem. And then when you bait and switch and say it's going to pay down your debt, and you don't pay down their debt, and that's what happened with my daughter and my son. Well, that's crazy. That's on the master's commission. That's bad.
Right.
So yeah, and and the other thing I wanted to mention before we get off here is that I posted that article on that ALC MC, I think it's MCA ALC Facebook page, where a lot of the people that were affected by the Atlanta, not that program, but Jeannie's program, and all the feedback so far has been that's just like our program. That's exactly what happened to us.
Right.
So they all felt, a lot of them felt like slaves and felt like they would just
Right.
they were told one thing: you're going to come here and learn ministry, and all they did is mow lawns, and they would just be with slave labor for the church.
Yeah, it's
So
interesting. I read through some of those comments, and you can just tell you didn't have to read between the lines. I mean, it was right there in black and white. A lot of these people who were talking about it still experience trauma from the abuse that they seem to have incurred
yeah,
during
if
time.
they
So,
questioned it, they were told they weren't godly, and they were told they
right,
were being disobedient to God. What a
right,
bunch of
yep, yeah, and so it's interesting, kind of as we wrap this up. uh, there's kind of a common denominator here, right? And part of it's because our experiences in the Assemblies of God, but part of it is because the Assemblies of God went really hard, all in on these kinds of programs. And this keeps happening, Mike. It keeps happening over and over and over again. And what's interesting about this lawsuit, and again, we'll unpack it probably a little bit more next week, is that it names the church and all its various, um, you know, parts and pieces. It names the Georgia District Council or the Georgia District of the AG. It names the national AG, and it names this other third party endeavor that lined up all of these, sort of volunteer opportunities for this. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I hope, Mike, that well, here's what I'll have to say. If you and I both know Toby Schneckloff, right? He's the district superintendent in Nebraska. Um, I wonder if he is aware of this. Number one, if he is, I wonder if he sat down at his desk and said, I should look across my state, all the people I'm responsible for, and I should maybe check into these programs and make sure that they're not, you know, doing things like this, or there's not some of the students in there are at risk. And maybe I should talk to my 49 counterparts across the state and say, hey, you know what, we really should look into these programs and make sure they're on the up and up and they're not flying under the radar and kids aren't getting hurt. And Doug Clay, maybe you should stand up and say, hey, you know what, you guys, you 50 guys, maybe you and women, probably some of them are women, you should go out and look at this. I'm not going to hold my breath that that's happening. Um, and I think that is a huge problem. And my heart goes out to parents and young adults who trust these people and who trust these programs. And if I could get inside their head, I would just say to them, do your due diligence, check these people out, be cautious, be suspicious, ask the right questions, make sure that what you think they're putting down is what actually is getting picked up, because this seems to be just a little bit more than a one-off affair.
oh no, it's rampant. It's
Yeah.
rampant. Yeah, it's rampant. All right, well, Brian, well, I can't wait to unpack this some more, and
Yep.
we will do our best to figure out how we can get this information out to you guys. Thank you so much for watching our podcast, Groomed.Connect. Spread the word, and we're going to keep going here. So
All
you guys
right.
have a good week. We'll see you next week.
Bye, all.